But right now we're in for a real treat because in a few moments we're going to hear from America's most successful veteran entrepreneur, Bob Parsons. Mr. Parsons grew up in the tough streets of Baltimore. He joined the U.S. Marine Corps at 17 and was wounded in Vietnam. He suffered PTSD, but he did not let his initial setbacks hold him back. Today, he is on the Forbes list of one of the few billionaires in the world. Roll the tape.
I am super excited, super honored for our next guest. To me, Bob Parsons is a man that stands alone as a self-made man, by any definition that you choose to define that by. From his humble early roots with parents who were dealing with their own issues to harsh schooling at the hands of Catholic school nuns, each step in those early days were marked by hardship and marked by financial struggles. At the height of the Vietnam War, Bob's love for the USA led him to enlist in the Marines. At 17 years old, he was quickly trained and shipped off to the front lines of Vietnam, where he not only saw heavy action, and the experience would ultimately define the rest of his life, but Bob would return as a Purple Heart recipient and very much a changed man. Along the way, battles with PTSD resulting from, yes, his childhood traumas and the war experience would let him out to seek effective treatments for all who suffer. And through his Bob and Renee Parsons Foundations, countless charities and organizations have benefited from his massive mission to give back. Through his business engagements, which includes founding PXG, Bob has amassed billions of dollars in wealth. But he's a man whose true value is measured as much by the contents of his heart as those of his bank account. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the one and only Bob Parsons.
Please have a seat. Thank you. I just got to make one quick correction. It's Lance Corporal Bob Parsons. So Lance Corporal Parsons, thanks for being here, Bob. We're so pleased to have you on our stage and at our conference and being part of this. A lot of talk, and people know you because of PXG and GoDaddy. But if they're fortunate enough to get a book today, or if they go out and read your book, they're going to find out a lot more about a man than just GoDaddy and PXG. So I want to ask you a few questions about where you came from, right? So you didn't have what you would probably call the ideal childhood, right? You had some rough parts in there. You had parents that were trying hard but maybe not getting it done. You got recycled in 5th grade, right? You got to do a do-over in that. But you didn't let that stuff get in the way. You didn't.
Well, my parents were trying to really hard to bet on the right horse, and they never seemed to do that.
Never picked the right one.
Yeah, and one thing I need to point out is you said Lance Corporal Parsons. I was a corporal for about 20 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Didn't quite work out, so.
We have some of those in here, Bob. We have some of those, and now they're called Colonel. I don't know how it happened.
Yeah. Well, those of you that are like that, just know I'm with you.
So, yeah. Parents, you talk in your book about your parents liked to gamble, and they weren't very good at it, right? So you grew up in very modest means, and you got to do a stint in Catholic school. How did that go for you?
Catholic school?
Yeah.
For me, it was like. You know, before Catholic school, I went to this public school number 83, and it was really nice. I mean, I really liked it there. And then I was 8 years old, and for some reason, I never did find out why, my father decided to become Catholic. And, you know, not that he ever went to church, he never did, just I had to. And it was like going to Catholic school then. It's an old school type of church. I mean, school. It was like being in a POW camp. I mean, the nuns and me never did get along.
Right.
You know, they always told me that busy hands are happy hands, but they were never happy with what my hands were busy at.
Right. So you tell a story about What grade was it when you got to the end and you didn't get a report card, so you were nervous that you hadn't passed, and you had to kind of finagle the deal? Tell me that story.
Well, that was the 5th grade. That year I had a nun, Sister Brenda, and at the very last day, of school, she handed out all the report cards, called everybody's name, and told everybody that as she handed them their card, to stand up and stand in line. And me and 2 other knuckleheads, Frankie and Anthony, we didn't get report cards because I was pretty sure we failed. So she told us, she says, I'm going to take this line out and to meet the parents, and you 3 guys, you wait here until I get back and execute you. And so the other 2 were waiting, and my father was there to pick me up from school, and there was no way I was going to tell him that I didn't pass. So when she left the room, I waited about 2-3 beats, and I left the room. And so I ran around the whole building and so forth, and I got to my father. He was standing there with my little brother looking at his report card. Now, keep in mind, he was looking at my little brother's report card, and he said to me, Robert, where's your report card? And I said, Dad, Sister didn't give me one. And she didn't. And he said, why not? And I said, and this is where I kind of crossed the line. I said, well, this year, Dad, if you passed, you didn't get a report card. And and my father looked at me like a dog that heard a strange noise. You know, he said, you didn't get a report card because you passed. I said, serious that could be? Yes, Dad, that's true. Now, keep in mind, he was a gambler. He had the racing form, smoking a Tarrington cigarette, flipped the cigarette in the street. And he said, all right, whatever, get in the car. And so we went home, same thing to my mother. And my mother said, you know, I've never heard of such a thing. And I said, Ma, call Sister. And, you know, I was pushing the envelope all I could. And she said, well, I'm going to call that Sister. I said, well, Ma, you should if it would make you feel better. Well, my mother never did call, and the school never called us. So all summer long, I was waiting for that phone call, and it never came because, you know, I knew I was on death row. And so, you know, it was the longest summer of my life, I think.
Yeah.
And then I got to the first day of school, and I went to school in one of the neighbors' cars, and I got in line with the 6th graders, and Frankie and Anthony were in the line with the 5th graders, and they're going to me, come on, come on. And I'm going like, I want nothing to do with these guys. So the bell rings, and you know, the kindergarten goes in, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, 4th, you know, 5th grade, and then the 6th grade walk in, and the nun that I had that year, that we had that year for the 6th grade was Sister St. Thomas. She pulled me out of line and, you know, had her nose about an inch from mine, and she said, Sister Brenda told me what you did. She told me you failed, but you didn't wait around for her to fail you. And so you left. She didn't know what you did. And then she said those magic 4 words. So she passed you. And that's how I passed the 5th grade and went to the 6th grade with 4th grade skills.
Yeah, right? That's innovation, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently that's how you become a billionaire. You just pretend that you passed the class and you move on. So you got through school. There's other great stories. The book is amazing, by the way. It's unbelievable, full of your stories from your personal life. So you get through high school, and at the end of high school, you may or may not be passing, and you decide you're going to join the Marines. And so you get some enlistment papers, right?
What happened, Michael, was I was pretty sure I wasn't going to pass because, you know, the critical classes, I did not have passing grades, or I was going to get passing grades there. But at gym class, I had two buddies come up and ask me if I'd join the Marine Corps, or not join the Marine Corps with them. They asked me if I would go visit the Marine Corps recruiter down on Conklin Street with them, and I did. And we went in there. This guy had us at hello. About an hour and a half later, you know, he looked at us and very solemnly said, you know, if you men want, I'll see if I can get you in. And we're going, oh, would you? So, you know, he says to us, he says, but you know, I have to check your grades. We have to call high school. We understand. I'm thinking, oh, God. So we taken, you know, I'll fill out whatever forms we had to. And then we went and, you know, had to do our physicals and that stuff. I was 17. My mother had to sign for me. Yeah. And she did. And, you know, she said, you know, maybe this will straighten you out. and it did. Yeah. And so I, you know, I just went into the Marine Corps office, the recruiter station. And, you know, I'm waiting for him to tell me, you know, we checked your grades, this, that, and the other thing. And he said, Robert, we think you'll make a fine Marine.
See, we're doing it wrong now, Bob. We're actually asking people and trying to get them to join. We need to pretend like we're doing them a favor. You know, kind of look around and say, maybe I can get you in. I'm not sure what they did to you. That was recruiting 101 right there, right?
100%.
So that's 1968. You joined the Marine Corps, and in 1969, that quick, you find yourself in Vietnam.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. When I got to Vietnam, I was a rifleman, and I was assigned to Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 26 Marines. We were stationed, operated in the rice paddy belt in Quang Nam, and our job was to keep the North Vietnamese out of these little small villages that they'd come in and terrorize the villagers and take all their rice to feed their troops. And so, you know, we did a pretty good job of that. When I got there, I found out that, that 3-4 days ago, they were ambushed, and they had my squad of 12. Four of them were KIAs, and one was seriously wounded, and me and a few others were their replacements. And so, you know, that was a little caused a little introspection.
Right.
And I remember after I found that out, before we went on that night's ambush, I sat on this wall and I looked out over this valley, and it was just beautiful. But I couldn't see it because I was too preoccupied with how I was going to live through this. You know, I was thinking that, well, the new squad leader had just turned 19. He'd been in the bush for 8 weeks, and nobody else had been there much longer. And I thought, you know, how am I going to live through this? And I kind of had what I think was closest I've ever come to an anxiety attack, where it got a little hard to breathe and you got the really empty feeling and so forth. And then it just occurred to me, I'm probably going to die here. And, you know, I thought about that for about 15 minutes or so, and then I accepted it. I just said, I'm going to die here. And the moment I did, I was okay. I mean, I wasn't happy about it, right. But, you know, that was...
There is that.
Yeah, that was the way. So anyhow, we went on ambush that night. I wasn't with them 4 hours, and I seen my first combat. One of the guys with this was hurt just horrifically. I just never could imagine somebody looked like that when they were hurt, but yeah. Grizzly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that night we were in a firefight, and I had my first KIA. I shot a snake. The snake was coming right up on me, in all fairness. And,
how did the rest of the guys in your squad, how did they react to that?
Yeah, and so we're sweeping through some rice paddies. We're looking for bodies for the body count. Our guys at artillery had launched illumination, and it's got everything lit up, coming down on his parachutes, lit up like Yankee Stadium. And, as we're going through this, I'm looking down, and there's this snake. I mean, this big-ass red snake. I never knew snakes ever got that big. And this thing is kind of just moving right towards me. And I thought, surely he's going to go left or right. But he doesn't. He's coming right for me. And so I put my rifle on automatic and sent him to snake heaven. And all the water, when the rounds hit the water, it splashed up, was in my eyes, that nasty stuff. And when I finally got my eyes clear, I looked around, and everybody's gone. Well, they all went underwater. And so I got my first good reprimand that night. And my squad leader, he was a little more gentler than the rest. He said, next time, don't shoot the snake, Bobby. I said, there you go.
So you're on another patrol, the patrol that you got hurt on, and that's quite a story too, because you had gone in once before that. You'd ripped your fatigues, and so they sent you in to get a haircut and clean up and get some new fatigues, right?
Yeah.
And so when you got there, you didn't have the right paperwork. So of course, you just said, I guess I'm not getting new fatigues, and went back to work, or what did you do? How did you handle that?
Well, what happened was most of us just had one pair of fatigues, and we're on ambush every night, and a lot of times on day patrols, and somehow or another I got tied up in barbed wire with mine, and it just ripped them to pieces. But it was all I had. So I had the company gunny send me to the rear that day, and told me to get a haircut, which I did, and to get new fatigues. So when I went to get new fatigues, I went to the supply barracks, and I didn't have the right stuff signed, and so the guys there said, "No, man, we can't give you anything," and so that sucked. So I started walking back, and as I was walking back, I was walking through this area where these barracks were, and one of them wasn't locked. So I walked up, opened the barracks, and went in, and I mean, this thing was like Candyland. I mean, there was all kind of fatigues and boots and cigarettes and you name it. So I opened one of the lockers, and there was a set of fatigues, and I tried them on, and they fit me perfectly. So I took, I had taken mine off, so I hung mine up on their hanger, put it in the locker, and then I filled all my pockets with as many packs of Marlboros and Winstons as I could, and then I found a rubber lady. Now, a rubber lady back then is an air mattress. It's not what some of you.
Let's just stay with that. It's an air mattress.
It's not what some of you perverts are thinking. It's just an air mattress. So I take it back, and it took me forever to blow that thing up. But I did, and the guys said to me when I come back with all those cigarettes, they go, "Where'd you get all this?" I said, "Never mind, I got it. That's all you need to know." So anyhow, I slept on that thing. I think we were back, after we come off ambush the next day, land on that thing was like, it was like being at the Four Seasons. So anyhow, when I got wounded, the guys, instead of being worried over me as I was being taken away, they were arguing who gets the rubber lady. Bob, who's going to get the rubber lady? The best thing I could do for them was to say, "You guys work it out."
So there's a lot of great stories from your time in Vietnam, and even the evac and the story that you talk about where you ran into, was it Sergeant Blackman? Is it right?
Yeah, Sergeant Blackwell.
Blackwell. So a gentleman that you had an encounter with earlier, where a helicopter was coming down and he just about got crushed by it, and you blew him out of the way. And then when you were back recovering, getting ready to go back to work, you ran into him at 2 o'clock in the morning, and by 6 o'clock in the morning, he had you doing something for him.
All right, okay. You left some stuff out.
Absolutely. I want you to fill in the gaps for us.
All right, okay. Well, anyhow, you know, on my first night in the bush, I saved the guy's life, for sure. I saved his life. He, like I said, this fella, his name was Ermo Hunt, this Marine, was hurt horrifically. He had a North Vietnamese hand grenade, we call them Chi-Coms, landed at his feet. He went to throw it back, and when it was like here, it went off. And it took his arm off, the side of his head off, a lot of his, it just was a mess. And but he wasn't dead. So this helicopter was there to, coming into Huey to pick him up, and this guy Blackwell was standing in the rice paddy, and he was losing his cookies, and he was obviously in shock. And a helicopter, this Huey was going to land right on him. And so I seen it, and I ran, grabbed him, and pushed him, and pushed him, and pushed him, and pushed him. And the helicopter missed us both, just missed us. No, you know, no doubt about it, I saved his bacon. So after I got wounded, I, of course, was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. In order to have to option out of combat, you need to be wounded 3 times. Now, in all fairness to them, it's very easy to get wounded with them 3 times. So I naturally, since I was still functional, because my just limbs were hurt and I was still mobile, I got orders back to the bush. So on my way back, and by the way, the Navy, of course, lost my payroll records. And so since the Navy lost my payroll records, during the whole time I was in Japan, and until the time I was ready to go back to Vietnam, I never got paid. No payroll records, no pay. So when I got better, I went to I was in Okinawa. When I was in Okinawa, I was with the in a casualty company, and in this casualty company, you're there because they push you out of the hospital as soon as they can, but you don't leave and go back into the bush until you're absolutely ready. So I felt like I was ready, so I went and talked to the doctor there. And I told him, I said, Doc, I'm ready to go back. And the guy was a good guy. He said to me, he said, Parsons, you've done your part. I will keep you here for the rest of your tour, and you won't have to go back there. And I said, Doc, I want to be with the guys I serve with. I want to be with them. And so he said, okay, and he understood. So he put my paperwork through. But when my paperwork came through the next day, the next week, the guy that gave it to me said, here's your orders. You leave for Vietnam tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. And by the way, your payroll records have showed up. And he says, take these to the paymaster. I got $800. So he said, you can go off base tonight, have a good time, be back at midnight. And he told me like that about 3 times, be back at midnight, be back at midnight. So I go off base, and I had a really good time. and
of course you were back at midnight.
Huh?
And of course you were back by midnight.
Well, it was about 3 in the morning, and I was walking down the street, and the rain's coming down sideways, and it, yeah, I was looking for something else to do because I still had money. And there was this guy walking up towards me, and so when we got next to each other, I noticed it was Blackwell. It was that guy who I saved during my first night in the bush. And Blackwell, said to me, you saved my life. I said, yeah, I know. You owe me a quarter. And he goes, we got this courier position, and that guy rotated, and we haven't put anybody in it yet. You can, I can get you that job because I'm tight with the company, Gunny. And if I told him you saved my life, you did this, that, and the other thing. So I said, sure, okay. And he said, what time are you leaving? Or when are you leaving? I said, 7 a.m. in the morning. He said, and this is 3 a.m. And he goes, man, I don't know if I can get it done that soon. I said, you know, brother, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Well, I went back to base, immediately got arrested for being AWOL. They took me back to the officer of the day, whose job is a second lieutenant, talk to losers like me coming in late, you know, and he says, he goes, why can't you be back at midnight? And I said, it says, I use this a lot in the Marine Corps. I don't know.
That's a deep answer.
So he says, get him the fuck out of here. And so it dropped me. By that time, it was after 4 sometime. So I woke up at like just before 7 and fell out for reveille with the hangover from hell. And I had orders waiting, stationing me at a Marine Corps intelligence on Okinawa. And I figured Blackwell got me in Marine Corps intelligence because looking at my academic record, I was exactly the kind of guy they were looking for.
That's awesome.
So
I want to fast forward. You come back. Unfortunately, you don't get the kind of welcome you should have, but you get through that. And you decide you go to work and you take a job for a while, but you decide you're not going to keep doing that. You want to maybe get a college degree. And so you're trying to figure out, you're going to go to college, right? So you go to admissions to start college, and they said, what's your major? And how did that all go? How did you become an accounting major in college?
Well, the deal was I had to, see, back then, I didn't know, nobody in my family ever been to college. I didn't know anybody who'd been to college. So, you know, I grew up in East Baltimore. So anyhow, guy asked me for my major, and I said, you know, what's that? So he says, well, you need to decide what you want to study, and you should talk to this, you know, this counselor. So I went to visit with the counselor, and there was a line waiting to see this guy. Was if all you people were in that line, it would have been about, that line was, you'd have been about half the size of what that line actually was. So I went back and asked him if I could select my own major, and he said, sure, you can, here's a book, and you just sign a waiver. So he gives me a book, I open it up, first major in the book, accounting. And I asked him that, and he goes, well, you good with math? Well, I remember, I was good with math, and the reason is the first day I went to St. Elizabeth, a Catholic school, I had everybody telling me that the nuns were going to beat the shit out of me every day, which they mostly did. But they said, so I was terrified of it to begin with, so I walk in, and I look up, and right at the entrance to the school on the wall was this big crucifixion with this effigy of Jesus on it. Now, I had no religious education at all, as you can guess from just listening to me talk. So I looked up at it, and what I seen was a guy nailed to a plus sign. And I thought, these people are really serious about their math. So I made myself a promise to never be that guy.
Yeah. And those people are now your USP and F&Os. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I told him, yeah, I'm good at math. And I think I'd like to learn about business. So I studied accounting, and it was a very fortuitous choice because it just clicked for me. And from all the discipline I now had from being in the Marine Corps and the focus that I came back with, you know, I did pretty good. And, you know, I sometimes think back that if I'd opened the book backwards, I'd have been a zoologist. But I didn't, and I studied accounting, and I graduated magna cum laude.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I passed the CPA exam the first time. I'd have never done that without the Marine Corps. I'd have never even come close to that without the Marine Corps. And I believe it's fair to say that everything I've ever accomplished I owe to the United States Marine Corps, because they turned me around totally. They taught me responsibility is sacred, and it is. They taught me the importance of discipline, that you don't have to like something to do it. You know, it doesn't have to feel good. You don't have to want to do it, but you got to do it. They taught me that I could accomplish far more than I ever dreamed that I could, and that I had a right to be proud. And I owe the United States Marine Corps for that.
Yep. It's beautiful. So you get the degree, you go to work for a company, and you're working for that leasing company, and you can fill in some more blanks for me, but you're out in California. You go to Stanford University to the bookstore, and you buy a book on computer programming. Right? And so you decide you're going to learn about computer programming, and you have the opportunity to work with some people at your business, but that was kind of the beginning of, the very beginning of Parsons Technology. So talk about that.
Well, exactly, yeah. So what I did was, I went to work for this company that would send me as an accountant to look at companies they were going to buy, and I would schedule their assets and things like that. This is way back when. I mean, before we even had LCD calculators, but they were all the rotary kind, and there was no monitors. There was very few. You know, there wasn't any microcomputers and anything like that. This is back in the 70s. And so I had finished this job. I've got about a dozen hours left before the flight. And I go to, I went to the bookstore at Stanford because I like books. And so I bought this book on programming in a basic computer language. And I went to the airport, and between the time, I got there and time that, the flight was to leave, I read a lot of the salient points of the book, and resonated with me. And so during the flight, I wrote my first few programs. And when I got to my company, to my delight, I discovered we had this dumb terminal which just happened to run the basic computer language. And so I would, as I worked my job, whenever I had a chore that would lend itself to it, I wrote a software program that would help me do it. And I got to be pretty good at it. When the first Apple II came out, I bought one. And then when the first IBM PC came out, I bought one of those. I switched, I started programming in Pascal, and I wrote a program that was in the basic, and Pascal, that was a home money management program I call Money Counts. I named my little company Parsons Technology and started it in my basement. That was my first business.
Yeah, and people don't talk about that. We know the GoDaddy story and we know the PXG story. The beauty of that story is that, you talk in the book about how you had $15,000 or $10,000 and you ran through that, and then it was $15,000 and you ran through that, or something to that effect. And you were into this thing for about $40,000, but you just had to keep almost failing but not stopping. It became kind of your mantra.
Exactly. Well, what would happen, Michael, is it would. When I first started it, I had $15,000. It was all the money I had in the world. I put it in this business, lost every nickel of it. I think I might have had $200 in sales, not much. And so I learned some things that when you screw up in business, what you learn is you learn what you shouldn't do. And that's as important as learning what you need to do. So that's one of the things I did. The next year, I had from a bonus in my real job, and from a tax loss from the first job, and from credit cards and this, that, and the other thing, I had $25,000, and I lost all of that. The next year, the third year, I learned that I kept improving the software, improving it. I used to get these magazines, these computer magazines from way back then. None of them are in business anymore, like Byte magazine and Compute and magazines like that. And I would flip through them, and there'd be these big ads companies would have, like Orchid Technology, IBM, of course, had one, and so forth. And I always used to tell my wife, I said, you know, it'd be nice one year we have ads this big in this book. And so, you know, I had my break in the third year, and I had this company call me. It was this little rag at a Fort Dodge, nice. Right? And the front page of this magazine, they had a contract for somebody that was going to advertise for it. They were going to pay him like $30,000 for it, you know, something like that. And they said they fell out, and they must have talked to everybody they could to do it, and nobody could. And they called me and they said, we can give it to you for $5,000. And I told them I'll take it. Well, I never had $5,000. So I took my software, which I've been trying to sell, for $129 and $99 and $89 and $69, then $29. And I said, I'll put it in there for $12. The ad said money counts, but it only costs $12. And I put the terms in there where, you know, back then software was copy protected. Said it wasn't copy protected. There was stuff that you could only use it like a bulk. You could only make so many backup copies, this and that and the other thing. And I said, it's not copy protected. Make as many copies as you want. Matter of fact, you can copy and give it to your neighbors. Do anything you want. Just send me $12. And so what happened the first couple days, you know, I got a couple orders, and then you see these things on TV showing a successful mail order business where the mailbox is just jammed, stuffed full. Well, that's what happened to me. And then down on you know, next to the mailbox would be a box with more orders in it. Son of a bitch. Yeah. So you know, I tripled my money then. Never made money on anything before. And of course, I paid them. And so what I learned was it wasn't little ads that worked. I used to run these little ads. It was big ads. And so I did that. That first year, I made $250,000. I never made that kind of money in my life. I never even thought about making that kind of money. The next year, I made $2.5 million. Then I made $5 million. Then I made about $8 million. And eventually, I sold the company in 1994 for $64 million. And $64 million, baby. And I had $40 million, not $40 million. I had $40,000 invested in it, and it turned that into $64 million. And that's the American dream, baby.
Yeah, which is unreal. And the funny thing is, you made that $64 million on that company, and people don't even talk about Parsons Technology because you took that money and almost lost it all building GoDaddy, which you eventually sold for $3 billion-ish.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to, you know, get too detailed, but $3 billion-ish is pretty close, right?
You know, I'm going to tell you something, Michael. Keep in mind, I come from East Baltimore, and the way I look at it, $3 billion is a mighty stack of cash.
That's exactly right. Yeah, so in GoDaddy's a great story, and again, people can read the book, and I encourage you to read that. But even after you did GoDaddy, right, and still to this day, you're not done, you're still doing things. But I do want to talk very quickly about, you decided to start getting into golf business, and you wanted to make golf clubs. Why did you want to do that?
Well, I like golf. You know, I've always done things I like to do.
Right.
You know, my father, God love him. You know, he's a smart man. You know, he would just have these things he'd say, and it'd stick with me. He always told me, he says, you need to do something you love, because when you love something, it tells you all its secrets. And he's right. You know, you have somebody that loves what they're doing, they're going to know the little nuances that are associated that makes all the difference, that sets them apart from everybody else. And that's the man and woman that turns out to be very successful. It's people that are doing what they love to do.
Right. In all of these business dealings and are the golf clubs, are they any good?
We make the finest golf clubs in the world.
That's right. That's a fact. That's proven. And they are right out here on our showroom with help me with the word, simulator. Thank you. You can actually try them out. You can check them out. We love having them there. They're going to be out there. It's going to be a really good time. You have in the book and things, and you talk about 16 rules to live by. What are one or two of your favorite things, your leadership things that have made you successful over the years?
Okay, well, you know, all of them are, you know, it's like, you know, what's more important, the gasoline or the engine? Right. You know, so, you know, I think they're all important. You know, it is, you know, one of the ones I like a lot, and I've learned a lot of hard lessons, and, you know, I always pass it on, is never expect life to be fair. You know, you do well if the only meaning fair has to you is what you pay when you get on a bus. And, you know, it's just, you make your own fairness. And that's significant. And if I had to pick one other one, this one my little brother used to tell me, God bless his soul, is we're not here for a long time, we're here for a good time.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. There's another one on there, and there's a couple sayings when you talk about there's no such thing as bad news in business, right? Because it can be an opportunity, and so you want that news right away. And you also say that happiness is a choice. Talk about that.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah, I learned that when I was young. That you know, I grew up. My mother was. She was a very sad, depressed person, and you know, she had a number of nervous breakdowns, I believe, that none of them were treated. And I mean, she just was a very tortured individual. I loved her so much. And so, you know, I learned that, you know, you could be happy if you just decided to be happy. Yeah, so, you know, like that, you know, why are we happy? Or are we happy because we smile? Or do we smile because we're happy? And I believe we're happy because we decide to be happy and we decide to smile. And so that's what I do if ever things, you know, if during those few times where I'll catch myself and I'm not too happy, you know, thrilled with something, I just remember that and I just think, come on, Bobby, decide to be happy. And I do. And it turns everything around. Takes a little practice. We all can do it.
Yeah, and you've been doing that since you started, not just because of all the success, but you've been doing that your whole life.
Yeah. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what I sure did when I found out I passed the 5th grade.
So the last thing I want to ask you about is I had a chance to meet with Leila when we were getting ready for this interview, and she gave me great information about you. And she didn't just give me information. She was passionate about who you are and what you're trying to do. And then I walked across to your Harley-Davidson dealer there in Scottsdale, the largest one in the world, and I talked to your employees. And the way they talk about you, the way they think about you, they're passionate about who you are. They're invested in you, right? How do you get your employees, your team members, your soldiers and airmen, how do you get them to feel that way about you as a leader?
Well, you know, and to be successful in any business, there's two groups of people you've got to get charged up, and or instill with enthusiasm is a better way of saying that. And they are your employees and your customers. And the mistake would be to think that the most important group there is your customers. It's not. It is your employees. Your employees will always be far more important than your customers. And the reason is, it's your employees who have the relationship with the customers or come in contact with the customers. And they're the ones that instill and pass enthusiasm, assuming they have it, enthusiasm along to the customers. And what do we know about enthusiasm? It's contagious. And everybody, when somebody sees somebody full of enthusiasm, what do they want to do? They want to be around them. They want to be part of that. And so I work on always doing that. And it's pay off.
And they know you're a patriot. They believe in that. And you know, if you go into one of his businesses, I was able to go into that Harley dealership. There's flags everywhere. There's murals everywhere. It's very patriotic. You're a true American, a hero to us, to this country, to everybody else around you. Thanks for what you do. The example that you've set for everybody is life can be hard, but it doesn't have to be a roadblock. You can go on and you can succeed. And you've proven that. And now your generosity to others, $1 million every 2 weeks you give away, your foundation gives away?
Yeah, we move $1 million to charity every 14 days.
Every 14 days. That's unbelievable. That is truly unbelievable. We appreciate you making this trip. We're going to go to the Minuteman stage after we get done here, and Mr. Parsons is going to sign books over there. He's going to sell books and sign books. And he's going to be here for a few minutes. You'll have an opportunity to see him over there. But before we go do that, I just want to, on behalf of Guard Nation, thank you so much for making this work. We're truly, what a privilege to have you here, to have your team here. And on behalf of all of us, thank you for your service and welcome home.
Oh, my pleasure, brother. Now, I know,
Yes, sir.
I got an announcement I got to make.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah, you're not done.
You're not going to get underneath the chair.
Yeah, the chairman's going to tell them about it. You can if you want to.
Okay, no.
I am the chairman of the National Guard Association, and on behalf of all the members who are here today, just a token of our appreciation for you joining us, a military coin. We're all part of the same cloth, and we appreciate you being a part of our program today. Thank you.
Got that right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.